Hey, this is Gabe. Welcome back to another video. We're going to remake this pen again. Well, a version of it, not exactly the same thing. My thought on the scallops, I think it was a good idea. It just wasn't executed correctly. As far as the Celtic knot scallops, these are great, but I'm not going to redo these right here in the middle. I'm going to do something different because when I first started out woodworking, I started out with a love of joinery. And that's what I want to do in this pen is I want to do Celtic knot scallops with some good old-fashioned joinery. We're going to be doing an open bridal joint as a means of segmenting, but I'm still going to incorporate the Celtic knot scallops, but learning from what I did on the first one, from my mistakes, I thought this would have been, a really cool looking pen, and it came out okay. I was hoping for a home run. Instead, it was a ground ball to second. So this time at bat, we're going to give it another shot, and hopefully we'll get a home run and knock the guy in off a second, and we'll have a nice looking pen. So what we're going to do is I've got some koa and some curly maple, and I'm going to join the two pieces in the middle with the Celtic knot. And instead of a 45 like we did in the first video on this pen, I'm going to be doing a 30-degree angle like what I have on my miter. You can't see it right here with that, but trust me, it's a 30-degree angle. So, and also, this is the X here for the back, and 1, 2, 3, and 4, so you can see what cut is what. I'm going to be doing the same thing with the aluminum, and I'm going to use some veneer inserts, so it's not going to be as thick as this right here. So the thickness of the blade is under 1/8 of an inch. That's going to be the total width here. So a thinner kerf blade cut across here, a longer cut. You can see what that looks like here. That is about 22 millimeters in length. It's about a 1 11/16 inch from the bottom of this jig right here that I use, just so I can eyeball it and get everything centered. So if I look at this right here, if you decide to do this, you can make the adjustments accordingly with the scrap piece to where you have your stop block on the back. So that is at the bottom. You can see where the middle of this is right here, and then that is going to be dead center where my Celtic knot is going to be. So when I cut this in half, it'll be pretty obvious where the wood is joined. Now I glued up both these pieces, and then I cut it square in the table saw. So there's a lot of work behind the scenes or under the hood that I've done ahead of time to make sure that this will come out as good as possible. Make sure you double check the height of your blade so that that doesn't go through, just like we did here, so that we don't want to complete that cut, so that we can make a nice Celtic knot. And you can see how long that is, and I think that will give us a really beautiful scallop, that Celtic knot scallop. And then an open bridal joint, we're going to use a different jig for that. So again, starting out on the table saw, this is my first cut here. Remember, you don't want to get your hands anywhere near that blade. Remember to wear safety glasses and dust protection. So there is our first cut. Now we'll go ahead and fill that in with some colored veneer and some aluminum. All right, so to do this, what fits is 2 pieces of aluminum and 2 pieces of veneer. I'm using yellow veneer, so that will fit in here perfectly without too much of a fight. Again, I'm using stick fast thin CA glue. Get that in the middle, nice, and be generous with that, as well as the outside. And I probably cut that way too thick. I cut that 1 inch thick, and this is only 3/4 of an inch, but no matter. Double check. It's not seated exactly right on the bottom, the veneer wise. Oh no, crap. Well, that's sucking out loud, huh? Well, it's still repairable. At least I've got the wood there on the bottom to line that up with. So that will work. And then that will line up still.
Seems like it's always something.
Okay, so my first cut was less than stellar, but I still like the way that came out. I got a good save on that, and you won't see that once that gets turned down anyway, so that will work out just fine. So what you saw me do on the first cut, I'm just going to repeat the same process all the way around till we get that all 4 sides done, and then we'll come back. Okay, now we're back again, and you can see that that is done all the way around. So we'll just put the miter gauge at 90 and then cut that in half and get a nice straight cut. Make sure that's raised up enough to cut through that. And I want to cut right down the middle of that right there, obviously. Okay, so now that looks right on the bottom. So the next step is to define the total length for both sides, and then we can start the open bridal joint. Okay, now that I've got these cut in half, I've got a mark here for my open bridal joint at 1 3/16 inch from the middle. The overall length is 2 inches, and it's going to be the same on each one. So 1 3/16 and 2 inches 2 inches in length. So these are identical lengths. It's going to be like that. This is going to be, again, for the executive pen kit. So, as you can see, there's it doesn't have to overlap that much. So the overlap is going to be like this. See if I can get it right. Like that. You can probably see that. So when this is set on there, now you get the idea of the open bridle joint, how that's going to work. If you don't know what an open bridle joint is, so an open bridle joint is like tongue and groove, and then you can see it's going to be like the maple here and the koa here, which is dark. So with that, we'll go ahead and start this. Now, I should mention that this is going to be the thickness of the saw blade in the middle, just a little bit greater, a little more than 1/8 of an inch, but less than 1/4, because by the time you get the thickness of the pen, you can see that that blade thickness is going to take up a lot of the width of the pen. So I don't want to get too great of a middle. So anyway, probably no thicker than just a little bit thicker than the blade width, depending on how it lines up. And then we'll do the opposite for the shoulders after the fact. Okay, so for this part of the video, we're going to be using my Delta Tenoning jig. I don't know what the model number for this is, in case you're asking in the comments. Anyway, this came when I bought my saw. I had the option of either upgrading the miter jig or getting this Tenoning jig. So I opted for the Tenoning jig. I had seen a lot of different not videos, but articles in the woodworking magazines that I used to subscribe to years ago, and making these. But for me, this has all the functionality built into it. If you've never used one, this adjusts here with the handle crank. You can loosen this up, slide this back and forth, loosen this. It has an increment gauge here where the whole thing slides back and forth this way. It was a $100 option that came with it. So anyway, I opted for this, and I've only used it a few times, and mostly it just sits on the shelf on my workbench. But there are those occasions where I've had to use it, and it's just invaluable. So to do this along with in the Tenoning jig, this is obviously way too short, and this is the length of the tenon that we're going to cut first. So I'm going to have to glue this like this onto here so that this is stable and, of course, safe to use. So when this is glued up, we'll come right back. All right, now that's glued up, and I just used some thin CA, and I am just going to put that in the jig like this, clamp it in place, but I'll do that on the other side there of the blade. Now we need to cut the shoulders for this one. So I need to cut this off right here, glue this one on the opposite side. I'll have to make a couple of test cuts. This slipped off right here and got some kickback, and it flew back and hit me because I didn't have it clamped in place correctly. So anyway, even used to doing this, sometimes you get complacent and accidents can happen. So anyway, just be aware of what you're doing with the table saw. It's not a toy. Okay, for the tongue, I already have that piece glued up, and you can see the test cuts right there that I did off camera. That's what that'll look like. And then after I get those cuts, the inside cuts defined, then I'll adjust the blade over furthermore so we can cut the outside pieces off. I don't want to cut any further to this right here with that blade. So I'm just going to rip this off, and then I'm going to cut this off by hand after the fact. Okay, I'll just cut these off. And we'll come right back. Okay, so that's what that's going to look like. It's a little bit sloppy in there, but I'll open that up, and then I'll add some yellow veneer in there, I think, to give it some color, or some aluminum. Not sure which. Okay, so getting back to this blank here, I'm not really happy with the way that looks, and it's a little off center right here. And that wouldn't, I mean, that side looks kind of okay, but that side's really off. I'm not exactly sure why. But anyway, I'm not exactly sure, or not exactly happy with the way this looks. So I don't want to put out an ugly pen that's all off balance. So remade this blank, and as you can see what that looks like, same technique, just spent a little bit more time on it. Without the camera, it's a lot easier, and that's pretty much an exact fit. And the only difference is now, instead of yellow veneer, I ran out of yellow, so I'm just using red. The red veneer is a little thinner, so it's 3 layers of veneer instead of 2. But anyway, the concept is the same. And like I said earlier, this is an open bridal joint. If it was a mortise and tenon, it would be like this, and then this would be solid on one side. So anyway, open bridal joint, if you're not familiar with that. Then we'll just glue that up and come back when it's time to turn it, drill it, turn it, and so forth. At the lathe, I've already dimpled both sides of this right here, so I can make sure I get that on center. And ordinarily I only drill from one side, but because of all the glue work done, I don't want it to blow out, so I'm just going to drill halfway through on one side, flip it over, drill out the other halfway through and complete it. That way I won't have a risk of blowing it out, even though it's going to be inside the 4 jaws. The diameter is a 23/64 drill bit that I have right here, a brad point bit. That looks pretty good. So remember, that drill bit's going to be very hot when you take it out, so be careful how you grab it from the Jacob's chuck. There, now you can see how that looks. That looks really good from both sides. So now we'll just glue it up. And for gluing it up, I'm just going to use good old wood glue, slather it on here, stick it in and let it cure. And since that is already the right length, there's very little trimming that has to be done on that, so that should come out really nice. And we'll come back as soon as that's done. Okay, I had a little blowout over here when I was trimming up the end using a barrel mandrel trimmer. I don't exactly like this one because it has 6 of these cutter heads. The one that I normally used, which is dull now, has 4. But anyway, you can see this has got a lot of use on it. But anyway, glued it back together with some thin CA. No big deal. Okay, I just rotated my cutter head on my carbide tool. I have a nice clean edge to work with. I've got a lot of miles on this one, so it's time to order some new 15mm cutter heads. Okay, I had to stop there. This end over here actually blew apart on me, as you can see it. I was taking very slow, shallow cuts. And it took me about a half an hour to find all the pieces. One of them was actually in the ledge of my garage door on the second panel. So that was a feat, just trying to locate all those little pieces. And thankfully, you know, there were whole pieces, except for that one piece right there that I could not find, but that's okay because this is high above the diameter that I'm looking to turn that to, so that would be turned down anyway. But other than that, I put a lot of CA glue and putting it all back together on this end over here and turning it down and making it look somewhat presentable. So I'm just going to saturate both ends again with thin CA, So hopefully that doesn't happen again on me. Like I said, and the CA glue I use is just stick fast with the accelerator. And you can get that at Rockler. That's where I normally get it. And if for some reason, if I don't have a chance to go to Rockler, then I just buy it online. I get it on Amazon, and that makes it very convenient also. You can just do a generic search for it. I don't have to link a description for that since you already know what it looks like. So that's pretty much all I'm going to do right there. Let that soak in, and I'm going to let that cure on its own rather than use an accelerator. I want that to seep all the way in. And you can see because of the accelerator that I already sprayed on there when I was doing the Celtic knot, that's also going to activate that CA, and you can see it kind of smoking off a little bit. So that's good to see. Okay, I turned a little bit of that off camera because it's just turning. It's nothing special. So, but what I am doing is I am working my way as a pull cut from this end and a push cut from this end going towards the middle. So I'm not creating any stress and pulling the joint apart. And I wanted to stop partially through and see what that looks like, and it's looking pretty good. It's looking as good as what I had hoped from the original pen, but using a 30-degree angle versus a 45, I think is the ticket here. And that joint looks really, really good, that open bridal joint. So anyway, yeah, I'm pretty happy with that. I'm just gonna add a little more thin CA to re-stabilize that as I go down. And then we'll come back when I get down towards the final dimension. All right, we're back now, and you can see I turned that down to my final dimension, and that looks pretty good. I do want to put some more thin CA all the way around it, because when I start sanding, I don't want the aluminum to bleed into the maple and the dust to go back and forth from one grain to the next. I want to be able to have that clear separation from the woods without getting muddled from the aluminum and so forth. So it's just basically acting as a sealant, like a sanding sealer, if you will. So I'm going to break out my Saint-Malo finish, poly oil finish, and just put on a few coats of that. And then I'll bring out the luster that way, and then that should keep that aluminum from spreading all through the wood. So I have a liberal amount on this rag, and then I'm just gonna do that like so. And you can see that color really does come out already, and it's not blurring the aluminum into the wood. So I'll just do this several times, and then I'll burnish it and then redo it probably about 3 or 4 times, and then we'll come back after all that is done. All right, it's been a few days now since I started applying that Saint-Malo finish, and I think that looks pretty good. It's not a super high gloss finish, but it has a nice shine to it. And anyway, that's about it with that whole turning process. Now we'll just go ahead and assemble it, and we'll be done. Okay, now at the drill press, I'm going to assemble this, and I want to use this as the top end here, and either side is just as good as the other. So I'm going to put the clip on the side over here. That way, if you're right or left-handed, it'll be good for either way, and it'll look balanced and look like it's universal. Room for the tip in here to put that on. You can see how good that looks so far. So I've got the ink. I'm just going to slide that in. Screw the mechanism on top. And then this piece here, we should just be able to push that, snap that in, and that looks good. And rotate, and everything is working fine. So that is a really nice looking pen. Happy with the way that turned out. So I hope you enjoy it. Have fun making one, and have a nice day. Hey, this is Gabriel Castro. Thanks for watching my YouTube channel. You can click on the link right here and subscribe. You can watch a video series right here, or the latest video right here.